Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. Man, I'm still trying to process an exchange I had this morning. I was sitting on my balcony having breakfast, and there was this woman I've never spoken to walking her dog. We've never spoken, but my roommate and I see down there pretty much every day. She's around our age, I would guess, so either in her 30s like us, or maybe in her 40s. We've never exchanged so much as a hello up to this point. Now, I really like my apartment complex. It's cute and pleasant to walk around, and the only thing that really sucks is when people don't clean up after their dog. It's so freaking gross, and I hate when people don't do it. You're a grown-up who made a choice to have a pet. That comes with responsibilities that you have to keep up with. Most people around here do clean up after their dogs that I've seen, so we know it's just a few rotten eggs. If I see people who don't look like they're doing it, I call them out, which I know comes with risks, but come on, people. The response is sometimes defensive, sometimes a bit of twisting the truth like, oh, I was just going to, but they all know that they should be doing it. Anyway, this woman has her dog right by our balcony, and my friend and I were just chatting until I noticed the woman walking away without cleaning it up. So I said, in a tone more polite than the situation probably merited, "Excuse me, are you going to clean up after your dog?" And she says in this snide, snotty voice, "No, I'm good. Thanks." I immediately burst out laughing, though not the good-humored kind, because I couldn't believe the audacity. I said, "Wow, that's really pathetic," which apparently is more than she'd expected me to do because she came marching back. I have to imagine most people don't call this woman out. For her to have that kind of immediate vitriol makes me think she's kind of spoiled just in general and was angry I'd embarrassed her. But she clearly knew I was right because she had come back and doubled down. So she comes running at us with this kindergarten logic and goes, "I'm not the only one who doesn't clean up after my dog. Lots of people don't clean up after their dogs." And I was like, so how does that absolve you of adding to the problem? She keeps going on about how other people do it too. So I said, cool, then give me their name. Let's have a list, because I don't see any of them right now. And she's like, open your eyes and figure it out for yourself. I was like, that's what I'm doing right now? She keeps shouting that she doesn't have to do anything she doesn't want to, and she doesn't care what I think. So I was like, holy crap, I've never met such an entitled person. It's insane to me that you're getting this angry over someone expecting basic decency out of you. And she says, no, you're entitled. I burst out laughing again and said, I clean up after my animal. Me telling you I don't appreciate you leaving messes on our shared property doesn't make me entitled. You're a grown-ass woman who knew what responsibilities she'd have when she got a pet. There are tons of other people who don't want to see your dog's crap. You're not the main character. At this point, I feel like this woman has never been confronted beyond her first snarky response. And I have a bubbly and friendly tone normally, so she probably had expected to have scared me or shocked me into silence with that callous initial reaction, because she is practically melting down, trying to upset me while my friend and I laugh. She gave me a snarky have a nice day, and I wished her the same in an equal tone. Then she waddled off. I know that's not me calling her fat. She was actually really fit. She just walks in a very exaggerated, cartoonish way like Jessica Rabbit or some crap. I thought she was doing it to be snarky, but my friend said she just always walks like that. We took a short video of her, sadly not of the incident itself as we had to go grab our phones, and I plan to take it to the front office just to let them know. It's only step one. I doubt anything will be done with just this, but this has been driving me crazy, and I'm ready to start holding rude people accountable. Fortunately, I can use the corporate offices if the people here don't start to put pressure on people who are blatantly breaking their lease. It's right in there that you have to clean up after your animals. I'm not trying to get anyone evicted, but I'm hoping she at least feels the pressure to act like a grown-up and take care of her pet. Like, I wouldn't cry if she got fined or something. Seriously, though, it's painful to me that people like this even exist. She was so confident that she was somehow in the right that she didn't even try to lie about it. Like, woman, you aren't 12. The other people do it argument isn't going to hold up in court, Mayo. A few years ago, I was working for a local health department, and part of my duties included the weekly monitoring of water quality at public beaches for K-Korner levels. It was a straightforward process. I'd visit the lakes, collect multiple samples in 100 ml bottles, and then take the samples to a nearby lab that the county had a contract with for analysis. Well, it would have been straightforward if it wasn't for Chumley. He earned the nickname because of his striking resemblance to the character from the Tennessee Tuxedo cartoons, although I guess a comparison to the Pawn Star version wouldn't be entirely inaccurate. Chumley was the lab tech who took delivery of the samples and then ran the tests. Simply put, the guy was a jerk. He was doing entry-level lab work, but had the demeanor of someone who was deciding where to put the Nobel Prize for chemistry that was inevitably coming his way. He also viewed all incoming clients as interruptions, and looked at us as if we should bow with gratitude that he would take time away from his vital work to deign to speak with such lowly peons. The first half of that summer, other staff had been monitoring the lakes, and it wasn't until the beginning of July that there was a shuffling of duties and I took over. Soon after I began getting the test results, I got a feeling that something wasn't right. The test reported the amount of coli present as a given number of colony-forming units, CFUs, anything over 300 CFUs, and we would issue an advisory. On a good week, the typical range for these lakes was something along the lines of 100 CFUs. But the numbers I was seeing now were in the low teens or even single digits. Given the number of geese, and by extension, geese droppings, that I routinely saw, those numbers were just a little bit too good to be true. Adding to my suspicion was the dramatic change in test results the previous summer when the contract for testing passed from one lab to the one that Chumley worked at. In the years prior to the switch, there would be about 40-50 individual samples that came back as high for the summer. The year that the switch occurred, the number dropped to 5. The year that I took over, up to that point, 0. So now I'm more than a little suspicious. The next time I dropped off samples, I asked Chumley if there might be a problem with the test, as those numbers just didn't seem plausible. Keep in mind I didn't accuse him personally of incompetence, as I acknowledged that it very well could have been a problem with the test itself. The response I got was the jerk love-child indignation and condescension. Apparently, the problem was that I didn't understand the real science behind what he was doing, and I should just leave things to the professionals. Okay, up to this point, I was just trying to get to the bottom of the suspicious results. The results that may have been telling little kids it was safe to go swimming in disgusting pools. Now I was genuinely mad. So I went to my boss with my concerns and suggested a simple test. The next time I collected samples, I would collect one extra. I would intentionally spike this sample with some of the readily available goose droppings, while I wouldn't be able to determine just how much of. Collie, I was adding. If the testing was accurate, the spike sample should at least be significantly higher than the others taken from the same location. My boss agreed, and I collected my samples. The results that came back on my special sample: 0, 0. Not none detected, but 0. Anyone who has done any quantitative work would know that is a huge no. Now I might not be as scientifically savvy as Chumley, but I'm pretty sure that this was evidence that something was wrong. I gave the results, along with the photos I took of the process, to my boss, who promptly had a meeting with the owner of the lab. Shortly after that, the lab lost the contract for all the work that was being done for the county, although it was called a non-renewal. While we are not talking about a loss of revenue significant enough to drive them into bankruptcy, it certainly made a sizable dent in the bottom line. What was the final fate of Chumley? I can't think that an employee who blatantly disregarded valid concerns and cost his company thousands of dollars would have a bright future. Screw you, Chumley. All you had to do was not be a jerk. This happened many years ago when I lived with my parents in NY State. I had this friend who lived in another state, and told me he was going to come and if he could visit. Many friends had visited over the years. My parents were cool with it. This is before cell phones were popular or internet easily available everywhere. I'd give the same instructions to all visiting friends. Go to Grand Central Station, go to the ticketing office, ask for Hudson Line, buy for this station. They'll tell you the track number, check the time, call me, payphone. When it leaves, take the train, keep an eye on the stations. They'll announce it on speakers. I'll pick you up at the station. This friend says no way he can do that. He'll get lost. I have to go pick him up. I tell him, dude, it's a 1 trip, 2 round trip. He replies he'll have a panic attack. He'll get lost. I caved. I took the train down, meet up, took the train back. I took him around town. He stayed the weekend, then dropped him off at the station. I was relieved. All he talked about was how awesome his life was in flat. It wasn't as much fun to have him around his other friends, but I was over. Next day, he calls saying he left a t-shirt in my room. I found it and offered to mail it. He goes, oh, no worries. My parents are here and offered to drive me there. What's your address? I tell him I'm going back to college and won't be home during the week. He says no problem. All he needs is his t-shirt. All for a stinking t-shirt. Weird, but whatever. He and his parents drove over the next day. My parents told me they asked to see the house. Almost like they toured it. They thought it was weird, but they had met their son, and he was weird. We think nothing of it. He called me a couple of months later to talk seriously. I was like, okay. He then says how he wants to move to Nye and his parents would only let him if he comes to live at my parents' house. I was like, what? Why? Why? Isn't L amazing? He says thing is that I'm stripper and I can make so much money a night. I was like, okay. But we don't live in Nice, dude. It's 1 away by train. He says it's okay. He'll just commute. I tell him I had moved out and was living in a small studio place by school, so sorry you can't move in with my parent. He kept calling after that, but I never called him back. He eventually figured out I ghosted him. I never heard back from him. He added me once in social media, but I unfriended him fairly quick. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. I'm writing this just after it happened. My boss, we nicknamed him Ross, allowed me to take a break for today as of how shocked and panicky I was. But I'm too shaky to even stand up, plus I don't feel safe walking home, so he offered to drive me home after work is finished. This entitled woman, who I assumed was the mom in the first post, comes walking back in. I was counter, so I saw her first, and I didn't want to make a big scene as we were fully booked today. And everyone would see and hear everything, so I was about to go into the kitchen to get Ross, who was helping cook with our chef. We have a different chef today, and her nickname will be Lily. Entitled woman. You aren't leaving until we talk. This is already getting heads turning. I'm not good with arguments if it is in a small group, let alone with a crowd of people watching. Me. I am getting my manager. I will be a... The sentence was cut off with her yelling even more at me. Entitled woman. We don't need your manager here. You're an adult, so you can talk like one. Now keep in mind I am barely an adult, and I easily get mistaken for being 18 or 19, and this woman was clearly twice my age. Me. I am getting my manager. Just wait here. I'm trying to be calm and nice as possible, as many of the people here know me. There are locals in the area, and since they don't know the full situation, I don't want them to think I am being rude. Though looking back at it, they probably realized something was wrong at the start. She is yelling, and I can't be bothered to write it all down, and I can't remember all of it. But as I go into the kitchen, as I'm walking towards Ross, he yells, Ross, what the F are you doing in my kitchen? This shocks me as I assume he was talking to me until I feel someone grab my shoulder and pull me around. This lady, this entitled woman, has just walked into the kitchen and grabbed me. Entitled woman. I said, She didn't have any time to speak. I pushed her off me. I am not very strong, quite obviously weak, but I guess me being so scared and shocked gave me the strength to properly push her off me, and she almost fell over. What the hell? That is assault. You're going to be arrested. Ross. Lily, call the police, he says to Lily as he runs up to me standing in between us. I was shaking a bit and I could hear some people outside talking quite loudly, guessing they heard what is happening. Entitled woman. When the police come here, they will see how awful you are to your customers and that C-word will be rotting in prison. Ross, you're fucking insane. She clearly didn't assault you. You scared the shit out of her and you clearly have many mental problems. This entitled woman gave me a death stare as I'm shaking behind Ross. She tried stepping closer, but Ross started yelling at her again. Ross, don't get any closer to her. Entitled woman. She is a grown woman who can handle herself. If she wants to fight, we can fight. Ross, shut up. You know she doesn't want to fight. Plus, you are banned from here. Get out. He nudges my arm. I didn't get what he was trying to do, but she started to pick up the stuff on the side like the chips and started throwing them at me. Luckily, nothing near her was sharp, heavy, or just dangerous, but I was already panicking, and this made it worse. They were both yelling at each other, and at this point I was crying and so scared I couldn't understand. I just remember at this point Lily coming in and walking me into the break room, which you need to unlock with a key, so we were able to lock her out. Now the police came over. I got questioned a bit. They heard me out and said what I did was fine, and I had genuine reason to be scared. I asked Ross what happened, what they asked him, and he told me that it was basically the same questions I was asked, but he also showed the security footage. At this point, I'm not sure what is happening. I'm sitting by myself in the break room on a beanbag as I write this on my laptop. I think writing this all down did help as I am no longer crying nor shaking as badly. I have noticed a giant red mark on my shoulder. This just feels so surreal as I read about these sort of stories, but happening to me makes it feel so much more scary than it is. Like reading through it, I feel as if I overreacted so much, but I know in the moment it felt like an even bigger deal than it really was. Edit 1. Someone was nice enough to tell me how to edit posts, so not much of an update, as it is the same day still, but I just got driven home by Ross, and after reading all the comments, I will press charges if possible. I didn't want to originally as I don't like confrontations. I also wanted this to end quickly as possible, but everyone was making such good points. I don't want her to do this to anyone else or treat anyone else like this. Before I forget to mention, I am not British. I do have an accent, and I am obviously not fully white. My mother is half Greek, half French, and my father is from South Korea. I don't think this is hate crime related, but I think this is something worth mentioning. Edit 2. I can't do much about what she did, but what I understand she's most likely going to be fine. And when I was asking how much, they said most likely around some thousand, as it wasn't too severe. But we have to do this small court thing. I think they said it was small claims, but it seems like a lot of work just for something that won't go too far, so I don't think it is worth doing much. But they do have this encounter, and the previous one on record in case she does something again to me, and then they said she might be able to get a bigger fine or even a few months in prison, as it will be treated more severely. We have to get a few details about me out of the way. I'm blunt and stubborn. Also, I'm better at my job than you will ever be, so just get over that now. Also, I hate my career field. I work in tech, but I'm not going to be more specific than that. A note on the stubbornness. I am the most stubborn and blunt, rude if you push me, person you will ever meet. I expect everyone, doubly so for management, to do the right thing even when no one is looking. One of the things I have learned is that narcissists and sociopaths cannot stand me. They will actively melt down if they work with people like myself. Those people thrive when people have to be nice, the exception to my stubborn bluntness. If you work under me, I help everyone working under me with everything they need, 100s of the time, and am super friendly unless they give me a reason not to be. I treat people under me, in terms of technical position and in the company's hierarchy, like royalty, and the people beside and above me like you should be at least as competent as myself. No excuses. Example, if you lie about me to me, well, I'd better be getting an open and public apology to the people who you lied to, with admission of guilt, or I'm going to make you regret it. Best not be treating anyone else below you bad either. Lots of managers have a problem with this for some reason. Don't want this to happen. Don't lie. Now, with that said, I have a constant wave of job opportunities. Every company I've ever worked for, including the one that fired me, begging to have me back at a higher pay rate than what I made when I worked there. Actually, about 25 more than the highest pay in the country I live in. So I'm not in any position to care if someone is going to fire me. Now that's out of the way. At my current job, I've worked here for about 2.5 years. I took this job because it was going to allow me to have the time off I wanted, about 35 days of PTO and 10 weeks, first 2 unpaid, of vacation time. It's a long story, but basically I need the time off. I was hired in at about 50 of the standard rate of pay for this reason. Contractually, I can take this time off anytime I want. I could, if I so desired, leave work midday and go on vacation. When I first started, the company laid off every other IT guy after about a year, aside from 2. Those guys are mostly there to cover me leaving suddenly, and if someone needs to pull something while I work on something else. My previous manager actually recommended me to manage the department, but I didn't want to take it, so the company gave me an open door to take said position anytime I wanted, and they would just demote anyone in said position. This is where sociopath comes in, to manage. First day he pulls us all, my team plus one more, into a meeting and talks about how he's a nice guy but is going to drive us to work extra hard. This is where the first altercation occurs. Yeah, how is that the case? Other team is purely reactionary, and our team has literally no issues inside the company, and 100 of our work is completed at nearly 3 times the rate of any other business in the area. We will hold questions for private meetings. Okay, fair enough. He pulls me in, and the first thing out of his mouth is to yell at me. I never want you to question me ever again. I was honestly stunned. Excuse me. You will do what I say when I say. Now get out. He wraps up the meeting by saying, I'm really glad to have gotten this job because I cannot leave this town due to the fact that I am obligated to watch my kids half of the year. So I can't wait to get to know all of you. I immediately went to HR as soon as the meeting was over and explained the situation. Thing is, HR is the guy who hired me, and we like each other a lot. He tells me, okay, well, unfortunately, it would be against company policy to fire him this quickly. Also, I have to take his side of the story first. He didn't yell at me after I went and spoke to HR, but called me in and said, listen, they're telling me to apologize to you, and that's just not going to happen. I'm your boss. It's my right to treat you how I see fit. I didn't realize you were a rat, but now that I know that, I'm afraid that I'm going to be extra hard on you. Better do what I say, or it's your job? I replied, it's not your job to yell at people, and maybe you should understand that. If you were half as competent as you want to seem, I don't think you would ever have a reason to yell at anyone. Also, if reporting behavior that is against company policy makes me a rat, then being a rat must be a good thing. He just yelled, get the F out, and pointed at the door. I replied, I'm afraid I'm going to have to go to HR again about your behavior if you don't apologize now, which I did. The issue. Well, I live in a one-party state for recording conversations. So I recorded the conversation. 3 weeks later, and HR has decided to keep him on because we are still way ahead of everyone in terms of metric. Since then, my team and the other team has gone from loving their job to hating it. Everyone is reporting to me that he is screaming at them constantly, but only in private. He doesn't even speak to me. The way he is treating the guys under me is what was really getting to me. They are his employees. He should not be treating them this way. I hate to use a quote from The Office here, but Michael Scott is 100's correct. A manager is not here to hire and fire, but to lead and inspire. Now we are supposed to have certain metrics passed down to us by management, but he has decided against that to keep morale up. However, I knew what he was up to. So I went to my friend in HR and didn't tell him that he wasn't sending me the metrics, which he is required to do as per company policy, and had him send me a copy of everyone's metrics early but keep it on the down low. So he did. For several months, I told my team and the people under me just hold out on quitting. He won't be here for long. Trust me. Slowly, things between myself and him escalated. I make decisions that he doesn't like because he didn't run that past me first, in reference to my vacations and days off. Contractually, I don't have to do this, and to be blunt, I can stand him, so he's just sole when it comes to me not being there. This leads to several times of him trying to scream at me while I sat there and was 100 and calm and patient but blunt and moving in my position that I can take leave whenever I want contractually, and he is just going to have to get over that. One of the things I specifically remember him yelling at me the last time, you will do whatever I tell you whenever I tell you. If I throw a ball and say fetch, you will retrieve it. Do you understand? At this point, I lost my patience and said, are you done yet? Oh, great, you're going to listen to me now. You are hands down the worst manager I've ever worked under. You are unproductive and least competent. The other 2 guys' metrics have been falling since you have been hired. Him, because your dumb butt never listens to me. You are the problem here, not me. Get out now. Me, are you done? Because I think you're going to want to hear what I have to tell you. Your absolute childish behavior is unacceptable, and I don't think that your supervisors or HR are going to appreciate how you have treated myself for this. At this point, he gets up, grabs the chair in which I'm sitting, and literally rolls it towards his door, screaming, I don't have to listen to a dip crap like you. I'm the boss, do what you are told. I replied, I hope you know this can be considered assault and battery. Him, shut the F up, and he promptly rolls me out of the office. Now here's the thing. Before that meeting, I said I wanted an HR rep to sit outside of the office and listen in. They said they couldn't do that, but would place one in the meeting. He was late. He overheard he last shut the F up. Just as he rolls me out into the hall, he then proceeded to look up, see HR, and start sweating bullets. Then, I was. We were just joking around, looking up at him. No, we weren't. He was just screaming at me and insulting me for no apparent reason. He looks down at me hard and says, this team always jokes around. I mean, it was just a joke. I then pulled out a small recorder and looked at HR and said, well, given that you missed the meeting, I think you should just review it here on this tape as this is just a joke. Apparently performance reviews are just a joke around here now. HR insists we go over the performance review. He pulls his copy out and begins going over the metrics on it, talking about how bad of an employee I am. As soon as he finishes, I look at the sheet of paper he is going over. I pull the metrics that my buddy in HR sent me. No, I'm afraid this is all wrong. He looks at me. I'm sorry. Me. Oh yeah, buddy in HR has sent me my metrics independent of what you sent me. In fact, and I can't believe you didn't know this, all of the metrics are review, able by any employee at any time if they make an inquiry. Actually, you have failed to send us any metrics at all, as is your job to do weekly. The HR rep then looks at me, is that all? Me, yes. HR rep, okay, I think we are done here. He requests that I stay. I look at him and reply, no, I'm afraid I'm done listening to anything you have to tell me. Afraid I have an appointment to review your behavior with HR. So HR and myself review the tape and their jaws are on the floor. HR buddy apologizes to me. They ask me what I think should happen as I was the one who was originally up for promotion. I explain that he should not only have to write a letter apologizing for his behavior in email form, but also apologize to all the teams under him in person at one time. Just after they send an email to him, I drop by the office and say, hey man, don't worry. I didn't let them review that tape. He sends an apology letter and tells me that you're on my good side now. A few moments later, HR comes down and tells him that it's not enough and have all the teams gather in front of him. In the meantime, I rig up the conference room to have a typed letter of all the times he is yelled at, every single person, which took me all night to do. He comes in and makes some bullcrap apology that's a non-apology. I'm sorry I was so hard on you guys. I just know your potential and I cut him off. HR isn't in the room. Excuse me. That's not good enough. I'm afraid you're going to need to apologize for your actual behavior and not give an apology that sounds like I'm sorry I was trying to help you and you didn't like it. No, I'm afraid you're going to need to actually apologize and admit to wrongdoing and tell the actual truth. At which point he visibly starts to get angry. I'm apologizing. Me. Okay, go on. Him. More non-apology with him being obviously fake upset. I press play on the slideshow. Okay, since you didn't get the message the first time, we're going to go through these individually. On December 11, 2001, you screamed at Robert Robington, wherein you failed to give him a review and simply called him a dumb butt. I continue. You need to repeat these words exactly if you want to keep your job. Dear Mr. Rob, I apologize for being overtly hostile and rude. I apologize for failing at my responsibilities as manager to both you and the team. I understand I have a problem with anger, and am willing to seek help with my clear lack of empathy for other people. As such, I will be signing a document admitting fault under the circumstances that I ever hit you again. I want everyone to know that I would be 100 at fault and you would not be, and proof of my misbehavior towards you as proof of my honesty in apologizing to witnesses will be signing this document. As soon as I finish speaking, he stands there and starts turning angrily red and says, Merberington, we need to speak alone. Now, I reply, no, I'm afraid we don't. If you do not wish to apologize to Robert Robington, then you can apologize to me for this. At which point I play the audio of him talking to me. I really hope your family member you died. I mean, really, I'm your boss, and this is your job, and you care about a family member. You think I give a damn about them or you? You could die for all I care. When a family dies, if you mourn, I'll be mocking you. I just want you to know that. Now piss off. You see, after that little incident, I couldn't have given a crap if I did get fired. I just wanted to ruin this guy's life. He immediately starts howling at me that I'd edited the audio and runs to get HR. Shortly thereafter, HR comes back and the entire room denies that any of this happened. We all instead go through with a plan I had from the beginning. I was going to expose him for the POS he was, if he does not honestly apologize and admit to actual wrongdoing. HR then tells him he's fired. He storms off. Now this is where the hardcore revenge part comes in. I used to work for every single IT company in this town or have connections to them somehow. Hell, I trained at least half of the management at the last company I worked for. My words have weight. So I make calls to all the places I have in, which is literally everywhere in town, telling them to blacklist this guy. However, at 2 companies I request that if he applies, I would like to show up and help them interview him. He applied to both jobs and I was sitting there in the meeting room. Oh, hey. Just wanted you to know that I knew Mr. Meat for years. Middle of the interview, I bring up his behavior with the audio from him telling me that he hopes my family member dies. I then tell my ex-manager. Also just note, you may want to write this down. All the tech jobs in our area will have a copy of this audio. So you can go ahead and explain to them why you told me this, and they can relay that to me. As soon as we get out into the parking lot, he swings on me and starts screaming, I will effing kill you. F you, F you. I run back into the building and security detains him and calls the police. My buddy recorded this on his phone, as well as obtained a copy of the video from security. After a quick court case and going to jail, he shows up at my house with a knife screaming, I'm gonna effing kill you. Ruin my career just because you are a witch. I think he had the address from working at the company with me. I called the police, got my gun, and explained the situation while I waited on the cops to show up. He proceeded to be detained and got sentenced to a 2-year stint in prison. When you get out, I hope you read this, you see this, you stupid jerk. I wasn't the tenant in this story, but it was a former roommate of mine, and I had a front row seat to the events. So my friend, let's call him Paul, returned to my city after living out of state for a year or so. He needed a place to stay while he got himself set up with a job and a new apartment. I had a spare bedroom, so I offered it to him for a cheap price. That way he could be month to month and just move out when he was ready. He probably stayed with me about 6 months, found a new job, saved up some cash, and signed a lease on a new apartment. Everything seemed fine. Paul liked his new studio apartment in a large apartment building. It wasn't far from work, near transportation, and in an area where he had other friends. Great. He got all moved in and seemed to be set. Until he realized the apartment had bed bugs. He wasn't there a week before he started finding bed bug and bed bug bites, of course. So he did what anyone would do. He contacted the landlord's office to report the problem and ask about solutions. The office claimed that it had no other reports of bed bugs. They had no idea what he was talking about. Maybe he already had bed bugs when he moved in. You get the idea. Well, Paul knew they were lying. So he started talking to the neighbors in his corridor. And of course he found others were also dealing with bed bugs and that the landlord had given them the same crappy responses. So Paul decided to do a bit of research to see what options the tenants had. Turns out, they could easily report the problem to the city inspectors, and the more reports they got from the same address, the more likely they were to prioritize sending someone to inspect the building. Paul put together the info for reporting with suggestions for what to mention and asked his neighbors to make reports. Some of them must have followed through because it wasn't long before Paul was contacted about the issue. He had bagged up all of his stuff and returned to my house, but still had the lease and keys for the place. He met the inspector at the building and showed her apartment. It was clearly infested, and there were signs in the hallway. The inspector turned out to be a young woman who was very dedicated to her job. She told the landlord it was their responsibility to cure the infestation. The landlord wanted to bring in his usual exterminator to treat the apartment and hallway. They tried that, but it didn't fix the issue. The inspector eventually insisted that they tear out the carpet and sections of flooring where the infestation seemed to be centered. By now, the inspector had seen that multiple units were affected, so the costs were mounting. She also discovered that the building hadn't had a proper inspection in years. The landlord was dodging her and didn't want to set up a time for her to do a full inspection, of course. Well, After he negotiated to get out of his lease, Paul gave the inspector the punch code to the front door and pointed out several things he thought the landlord was hiding, including bed bugs on other floors, malfunctioning elevator, old fire extinguishers, illegal basement-level units, improperly stored building supplies, tripping hazard floor and laundry room, damaged walls and corridors. The inspector called Paul and let him know she had returned to the building on a couple of occasions. Once she was meeting the building manager. She let herself in a little early and walked up on the manager trash, talking her and saying how he didn't want to be bothered. LOL. The family-owned firm that owned that building had several large apartment buildings in the area, and the inspector intended to visit them all. She had already found tens of thousands in repairs for Paul's building that she was insisting the owner make ASAP. Given how they were operating, I'm sure all of their buildings were in a similar state. They made an expensive mistake when they tried to ignore Paul. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.